might be
This
helpful.
conference will now be recorded.
And we're also being recorded at this moment. So before you speak, please state your name every time, even council members, because Sue is taking the minutes and it's far easier. She can't see us, for her to just be reminded of your voice. I would ask that everyone mute unless you're called upon, and I'll tell you how I will try to go through doing that effectively. As we get to an item to consider, like the consent agenda, for example, I'll go down a roll call and ask each of you if you have anything to say or a question, and we'll work through the agenda that way. There is a chat box for some of you who are online effectively with GoToMeeting. So you can also write in, your a comment, or, hey, I want to be recognized. I will also, since there are a couple people on board who are not on GoToMeeting, they're just on by phone, I will be sure to, after each item, ask if anyone in the public wishes to say anything. I will take down their names and then I'll go back and call them in order so we don't miss anyone. So that's it. So why don't I call the meeting to order? And I just would like to say that as chair of the City Council of South Burlington, due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and pursuant to Addendum 6 to Executive Order 1-20 and Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. In accordance with Act 92, there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the temporary amendments to the open meeting law, I confirm that we are providing the vast majority, anyway, of the public access to the meeting by either telephone, video, or other electronic means, with additional access offered through GoToMeeting for this remote meeting. All members of the council have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen, and if desired, most can participate in this meeting. We've provided public notice of instructions for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing this meeting, including how to access it, both on our posted agenda as well as on our website. And Paul gave 2 tutorials today, and I don't know if that will be repeated the next time, but it certainly was helpful to me. We have provided a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. And if anyone has a problem, please let us know. We'll continue the meeting if necessary, but if in the event that the public is unable to access this meeting, it will be continued to a time and place certain. But clearly the public is accessing this meeting because I see lots of people who aren't on the council in the pictures. So I'll start the meeting by calling a roll call attendance of all members participating in the meeting. So we have Tom Chittenden.
Hello.
Megan Emery.
I'm here.
Paul Connor.
Present. Hi.
Kevin Dorn.
I'm here.
David Kaufman.
I'm here.
Tim Barrett.
Present.
And myself, Helen Reilly, and we have Sue is taking minutes just by sound. So that's why we'd also like you to speak slowly and articulately. And we have several people who have called in or are participating through GoToMeeting with a visual as well as the audio. Okay, so our first item is, I'm trying to wonder if we really do the Pledge of Allegiance since we don't have a flag.
By the way, I'm Michael Mittag. You don't see me, but I'm here.
Yes, thank you. Shall we just say the Pledge of Allegiance?
We could probably
Okay.
skip the pledge.
Okay, then item 2 is agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order of agenda items? Tom? Dave?
No, I think at some point that we should discuss under other or wherever it fits is the activities of the other committees, especially Planning Commission and the DRB.
Okay. Let's see. Megan? You
None.
okay? Tim? I do not have any. How about you, Kevin?
Tom wanted to give an update on the financials, didn't you, Tom? Hubbard?
I'll do the March ones at the next meeting, Kevin.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda. Okay, Roseanne? And after she speaks, I'll ask if anyone on the phone wishes to say anything. So thank you.
Okay.
Roseanne, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Roseanne Greco. I'm a resident of South Burlington.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Hey.
Okay. I want,
Watching the city council.
oh, I'm sorry. I want to thank the counselors and the city staff who continue to perform the essential duties that must be done in order for our city to function, such as this council meeting. And I applaud you for the leadership you have shown in putting a pause on non-essential city activities. This is not only prudent and wise, but it respects our democratic process and shows true transparency. Even though the state made it legal to hold meetings and make decisions in a virtual environment, just because it can be done does not necessarily mean it should be done. However, I question why the Development Review Board is continuing to conduct business. I am asking you to please take the same action in pausing all DRB work as you have for other city committees for the following 3 reasons. First, DRB actions are not essential, but they have significant consequences for our city, especially regarding the preservation of our natural environment. Second, the condition of our economy after the pandemic could make developments approved during this time of crisis inappropriate or unattainable. And third, and perhaps most important of all, losing the voices of South Burlington citizens could result in uninformed DRB decisions. I know of citizens who otherwise would want to weigh in on DRB discussions, but would not be able to do so for varying reasons. Some include that they may lack internet connection or have spotty internet and/or cell service, and/or they may not have the proper devices, computers, tablets, smartphones, and/or they may not have the knowledge or experience in using virtual technologies. These days, people may be coping with personal or family illness. They may be dealing with financial problems. They may be having problems focusing on DRB and city matters because of stress. These are not normal times. It's no secret that I'm concerned about saving our environment and taking actions to stem climate change. It's one of my highest priorities for our city and the world. Even in the quote normal past, too often developments approved by the DRB have had disastrous impacts on our natural resources. A recent example is the O'Brien development, which took down an entire forest without any consideration for how valuable those trees were for human and animal survival. There are current development proposals which, if approved, will result in even more destruction of our natural resources. Now is the time to take a pause in DRB actions, as you have done with IZ and other city committees. The world after this pandemic will be different, and more than likely we'll be making different choices. That's assuming we learn from the crisis. Who can tell now what the economy will be like, or whether we'll be facing a recession or a depression? Right now, in other places, population density is killing people, and we are learning how valuable our wide open spaces are for our health. State and other officials are telling us to get outside, but to stay in our local areas, meaning not to drive our cars to far off spots. They advise us to walk to and around our natural spaces in order to help us physically and mentally survive the virus. How short-sighted and foolhardy would it be that while we're out there getting physically and emotionally healthy in our open spaces, the DRB is approving their eventual destruction in order to build yet another housing complex. So please, put a halt to the DRB's business as usual work. This pandemic will pass, but we will not and we should not be the same after it's over. Our economy will be different. Our future needs will likely be different. Let's use this time to pause and get our true needs and priorities in order, and then make plans aligned with those. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Ellen, you're still muted. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the mute button wasn't showing, but then it was. Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? I know Michael Mittag is on the phone. There's a couple. There's a WR and an SC. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Announcements and the city manager's report. So Tom, do you have any announcements?
I do not.
Megan?
Sorry, it takes me a while to get my cursor on the mic. I don't think so. I mean, I'm in communication with folks, but I haven't been out and doing much lately.
Okay, thank you. Dave?
Nope, nothing.
Tim?
Nothing much. Hey, the parking ban is over. Whoopee!
Well, that's always good to know. Although we're supposed to get a little snow, right? Okay, thank you. I haven't done much either, although I will tell you that I did have, I was concerned, similarly to Roseanne and another public member who called me, about the ability for the public to really connect easily and well to the meetings. And so Kevin and Paul and Marla and Matt Coda and I had a phone conversation about that, in terms of, I was trying to understand how well he thought it was working for the DRB, if there were any problems. I asked if things were controversial, if it's possible to slow them down, in the sense that you may be ready for a vote, but you might want to put it off or continue the hearing so that you can generate or elicit comments from the public who are not able to effectively join the meetings with almost any of the modalities that we have identified. He was pretty adamant that they needed to continue, that it was important for the businesses to be ready for things when we're back to whatever the new normal will be. And he felt very strongly about that, and felt that people who wanted to participate could. I think Paul pushed, or not pushed, Paul and Kevin agreed that we could possibly do more as a city to make sure that those who don't have internet, and I mean, I have lousy internet. I'm sitting right next to the router in an upstairs bedroom because that's the only way I can get on this effectively. Some people don't have internet or cell phones, probably not the majority for sure, but we have an older population, and I guess I'm one of them because I certainly had a heck of a time getting connected to this very easily. I don't have a teenager at home to help me, or a spouse who is more technically inept. He is more technically inept than I, so he's no help. So I appreciate that there may be a number of people out there that need a different way to advance their thinking and ask their questions. So Paul and Kevin have agreed to really make more of, or a greater outreach to ensure that people have the ability to interact in a meaningful way, even if it's a email after the meeting that says these are my questions, or an email before the meeting, these are my questions, to try to arrive at a more robust conversation. Paul, do you want to add anything to that of what you might be doing?
Yeah, let me just note that we did take a few extra steps beyond the normal. So in addition to the normal posting that's taken place for both the city council meeting tonight and tomorrow night's DRB, so there was the agenda was still posted in the 3 physical locations that they always are. They were still sent out digitally the way they always are, but you probably saw that we put out an announcement over all the front porch forums. The same thing went out over social media, both for the practices and for the full agenda this evening. When we spoke with Matt and Marla, we discussed that if there are any technological problems that should happen to come up during the DRB meeting that demonstrate that there's any inability for people to weigh in, that those items would certainly be allowed to continue. There'll be an abundance of caution all around to make sure that folks are able to weigh in all the ways that they are seeking to. And if they're, while we believe that the majority of our residents have a manner to communicate, if there are any individuals who are finding that they know about the meeting, but they can't get the materials, or they don't, they're looking for more information, then we can certainly help them out individually if that winds up being the case. I've not heard of anyone yet specifically seeking more, but that will stand tomorrow if there's anything that comes up. So.
Okay, thank you.
I would only add to what Paul said, that you don't need a cell phone to participate. A normal landline telephone will allow you into the audio only part of a meeting. So it's not just cell phones, normal landlines too. So.
And we can
Okay.
also confirm now, thank you to CCTV. They are here, they are recording, so that will be available after the meeting for folks. So that's another option, as well as Sue being here to take the minutes.
Hey, Roseanne raised her hand.
Yeah, this is Roseanne Greco again. I don't want to beat this to death, but I do want you to also keep in mind that these are not normal times. And it is hard to focus when we are all under stress. And the first thing you might not jump to is a DRB meeting or even a city council meeting, because there are so many other things that people are coping with now. So technology is one issue. But I mean, I just got to be pretty honest. It's hard to focus these days on things that I consider vital, which is the environment and stuff, because of so much else that's going on. And I know I'm not alone. And so that's why I really urge you to err on the side of caution. The DRB work is not essential. what they're doing now may not matter given what our future is like, but you are not going to get the participation that you normally get in your city meetings because there is so much going on in our world now that is distracting us. And you are going to lose the voices of people who otherwise would speak out. So I've said it before, I just thank you for listening.
Any other comments from the council? Have you heard, or we can do this later, actually. I think under new business, I wanted to get some feedback from council members about what they're hearing and if we want to. I've also had a email that's requesting that the other committees can go back to work. So we get, you know, people saying, I can't participate, so please stop. And then other people on active committees who would like to be meeting again. So we can discuss that later unless someone has a comment right now. No? Okay. Moving on then to the city manager's report. Kevin?
His video looks frozen.
Okay. Well, I guess we can come back to that. Why don't we move on then to the consent agenda? We have 3 items.
I'll move that we pass.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to pass and seconded.
Can you
Megan-
identify, Helen,
Megan
can you
Emery.
Okay.
just identify who did what?
Yeah,
Okay,
Megan
so Megan
Emery,
Emery. Go
I
ahead.
move to pass the consent agenda.
Chittenden seconded.
Are there any comments? Tom,
None.
about anything? Okay, Megan,
No.
Dave,
No,
Tim?
Nope.
Okay, and I don't have any. So we have a motion on the table that's been made and seconded to accept the consent agenda as presented. All in favor, and I'll just go through the list. Tom,
Aye.
Megan,
Aye.
Dave,
aye.
Tim?
Aye.
I can't read that. And Helen says aye. So that has passed unanimously. Number 6, I don't know if Kevin is going to be able to join us if he's still frozen, but this item 6 is an update on city management measures to address the COVID-19 threat. So Kevin, can you join us? Can you hear us?
Is he totally gone?
Helen, I've reached out to, this is Paul, I've reached out to Kevin. He's probably restarting his computer for, or something like that, so.
Oh, okay.
I
All
have a
right.
bit- Helen, I have a bid on the finance part of that, or we
Right.
can go to number 7 and come back to number
No,
6.
why don't you do the finance part? That's fine.
Okay, so our focus still really is on getting the payroll out, making sure we do our payables and doing financial monitoring. We should have the March financials out next week, which we're all eager to see. And you'll also be receiving the financial narratives from the department managers with this next set of financials. I think most of you have seen that loan payments on the state drinking water and clean water revolving funds from the state have been suspended for FY21. That means that we don't need to make our payment on Airport Parkway. That's being waived for a year for FY21. We also won't be receiving the revenue from what we get from the town of Colchester. But that was one item. Secondly, we're following closely all possible funding sources for state and federal public assistance. We're filing the request for public assistance with FEMA. That's being filed within the next few days. Justin is going to take the lead for that because he has the most experience in doing that for us. We also want to find out, because we've had an increased response with our emergency team with 211 responses to various hotels within the city, what expenses might be reimbursable for our first response teams. Anything that is reimbursable is 75% reimbursable. So we would only be responsible for about 25% of any of those costs. To date, we've spent a little less than $20,000, which is pretty good on this whole emergency crisis. All of that 20,000 is reimbursable through FEMA. So again, with the 75%, we'll get 15 of that 20 back. We're also following the federal stimulus package, the CARES, the Coronavirus Aid Relief Economic Security Act. We're exploring the employer tax credits and the employee retention credit that they've been talking about. We're also looking at funding channeled through existing programs, including block grants, law enforcement, and emergency preparedness grants. Our local options taxes, as I mentioned before, is probably going to take a pretty good hit. And as we go further into April, maybe into May now, we're not expecting a whole lot in terms of revenue for this payment period, which is mid-February through about May 10th. We're wondering and will inquire as to whether or not the state might waive their state taking of the portion of those funds, which is 30%. So we're exploring that. And then, of course, we'll have the shorter payment from the middle of May until the end of June, which we hope we'll have things picked up a bit more by then. Expenses, like I said, for the current crisis are less than 20,000 at this point. And I know that Kevin wanted to really address the emergency response. And Kevin, are you back on yet? Okay. Do you want me to go ahead with some of what we're doing, Helen, or? So we're continuing to have a video conference go-to-meeting calls every day at 3 o'clock with fire, police, public relations, Kevin and myself, and both Sasha and Terry Francis from fire have been involved, and Justin Rabideau. So we are finding through as we reported, I think at the last meeting, we haven't seen a huge uptick in the number of calls for fire, ambulance, and police. It's remained pretty steady, maybe even a little bit less than what it would typically be under normal circumstances. What fire is finding is a little bit of an uptake in the number of response calls for COVID-19. So for instance, last night, out of 13 calls, 4 of those were COVID-19 related. And I believe 2 of those were related to our 211 facilities in South Burlington. So those have picked up just a little bit. I think we've, I would say an average day has probably been 2 or 3, but we had 4 last night. And I think we had a couple as of the time that we spoke today at 3 o'clock with Captain Lascalia over at the fire department. So we continue to meet daily. Just to update, we continue to be plugged in with the Vermont Emergency Management every Friday on a 2 o'clock phone call. But quite honestly, the governor's updates on a daily basis have pretty much kept us as informed. And we're finding that the Friday phone call is really a recap of some of the things taking place during the week. Our police agencies are monitoring activity within the community. They're not in an enforcement role in terms of breaking up groups, but reminding people to keep social distancing. They're checking on hotels to make sure that people aren't there booking rooms or booking online, that they're for emergency preparedness reasons only. So their activity has been more in those veins. They've been patrolling the parks a little bit more, and the activities there, and are finding that the majority of the community has been very compliant and very respectful about changes that have gone on within the community as a response to the social distancing. Kevin, I see that you're back on. Are you able to speak?
Yeah, I am, Tom. I'm not sure what happened. It was something with my computer, not the connection, but I hear you're giving the overview. I'm sure, why don't you just keep going with the overview?
Yeah, so I touched on some of the finance things that we're doing. I've talked about our daily calls with our emergency management group and the calls that we have weekly on Friday with Vermont Emergency Management.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a bit about what we're doing with some of the other staff, non-public safety?
Yeah, we are holding a management team meeting every Wednesday. So at 10 o'clock, we'll have our management team, as we normally do every other Wednesday. Now we're doing them weekly. And then we have a town hall meeting with all staff available to call in at noon on Wednesday, so they can keep in touch with what's going on if they're working from home or if they're on administrative leave. As you know, staff that are enabled to work at home through computer access are doing that. Their managers are keeping in touch with them on a daily basis with work plans and so on to make sure that the work of the city continues. We do have some staff that are on paid administrative leave because they're not able to work from home. Included in that are a number of people at the Department of Public Works, but we view those people as being held in reserve. In some cases, they're able to do some things where we believe the environment to be safe for them. We're doing some limited pothole work. We'll be doing some street sweeping, those sorts of things. But I would also say that the entire first responder team, fire and public works, as well as our team at water quality, all asymptomatic. Nobody has symptoms related to the COVID-19, which is a great thing given that we're in proximity with people who have the virus. So we're pleased with that. Our PPE supply appears to be adequate for the foreseeable future. We are in communication with the State Emergency Management Office or Emergency Operations Center on PPE and other things. Tom, did you mention the Holiday Inn and the Travel Lodge?
I did mention that we had the 211 locations here and that we've had increased emergency response to those facilities as a result of those placements, both for police and ambulance.
Yeah, and we have passed our concerns on to the senior leadership at the state EOC about whether or not they could station a medical professional in those two facilities as kind of an ability to work directly with the hospital on need. What we're finding is that our ambulance or our police are arriving on the scene and finding that the people in question are not really emergency room eligible. The state is considering that right now, and they're having a meeting tomorrow. This is one of the items on the discussion. Beyond that, our calls were up a little bit yesterday, and we had more COVID-19 possible calls. But generally speaking, our call volume has been lower than it has. One thing we are getting a lot of calls from the public about people playing in the parks or people congregating in areas or businesses being open. The protocol is that we pass that we can go by and confirm that those things are happening, but the protocol right now is that we pass those things on to the state police. and it's up to them as to whether or not to enforce the executive order. We really don't have any enforcement powers around the executive order, but we are taking a lot of these calls, and frankly, it's kind of starting to plug up our dispatch operation a little bit more than we care to have. So I think that's all I've got. Are there questions?
I have just one question. Well, actually, I have a question and a comment. So, and I shared this with you, Kevin, and I just wanted the rest of the council to know. I had asked him about did he think the state might be willing to extend the TIF years or year for those TIFs that are in the middle of identifying projects and going before voters to assume some debt. And we're sort of stuck in the water right now with the work on the community center has ceased. So we're not really in any place that we can say, oh yeah, let's see what else we want to fund with TIF money. And I'm hoping we can work with the legislature and the governor with the potential of extending the time out where for those communities, or at least our community, to make some of those decisions and still reap the benefits of the TIF. So it hasn't been brought up, I don't think, or addressed, but I'm hoping that it can and it will. I would also add, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, we will be communicating to VEPSI on that, Helen, and we'll probably also let the chairs of the two jurisdictional committees in the legislature know about it as well.
Okay, good. I think it's a reasonable request. The other thing, I did have a call from AHS today about the Holiday Inn and what's the other one? I can't remember. Whatever the other one is. Yeah.
Travel.
And yes, they were sort of touching base with local leadership, and I was aware of it. And the question I asked that I'm sharing with you the answer, I wanted to know exactly who would be staying in the Holiday Inn. And as I understand it, it's just those individuals who need to be in the 2-week quarantine, that they're not necessarily, they may have tested positive, but they don't need the medical care that an ICU would offer. So those are the people who are potentially going to live there. I don't think any are there yet, but my understanding was that this was to make ready the chance that there would be a real spike in the next week, a couple weeks, and that the Chittenden County would be ready for some of that overflow. So that's kind of, that is an update.
Yeah, there's kind of two populations there, I think, Helen. The 211 population that's there now, and the isolation population you just referenced, that may be coming in a few days. They're just finishing up the lease with for the Holiday Inn, and like you said, it's kind of in reserve right now for that purpose. So we are getting better communication from the state EOC and the health department on those matters, and which is welcome, because there hadn't been as good a communication as we might have liked a week or 10 days ago. So,
I did wonder if having those residents staying at the Holiday Inn would generate a bigger call volume for our mental health outreach. Any thought about that? I mean, I'm sure Sean has thought about it.
Our 5 community outreach staff are continuing to work, mostly by phone, counseling people through some hard times. So we are seeing an uptick The state is aware of this, and it's a statewide issue. It is one of the topics of their leadership meeting tomorrow. As I think I might have alluded in an email, Carrie Sleeper, who used to be the Commissioner of Public Safety, has come back and is working under Mike Smith to handle exactly these sorts of things. And so right now, capacity is a concern for support for people suffering mental illness related to C19 or unrelated to C19. But that is a discussion topic for the leadership team tomorrow. We are very concerned about this right now.
Are there any other questions the council members might have for Kevin? Tom?
Nope, thank you though.
Megan?
You did cover it. I was wondering how it was going to be with mental health.
Megan, your volume sounds like you're a bear.
Or robot.
Or a robot or something. Yeah.
Bad robot.
Like an echo chamber. It's creepy.
Did you hear me better?
No.
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 Try muting your mic and turning it back on again.
I also recommend using the chat. If you chat your questions, people can read it and the chair can read it aloud.
Did you hear me?
Well, we can hear you, but
It's really, do you want to
It's
chat? Can you write the question?
Sure.
While she's writing the question, Tim, do you have any questions?
I have a question. So, Kevin and Tom, can you tell me if there, every property tax bill season, right, there's a yield of people that, don't pay on time. Has that number worsened in the March 15th billing?
I don't think it did. Most people had paid their taxes before the problem hit.
Right.
We have agreed to waive the penalty and interest between the 15th and July 1 for people who've paid late. After that, though, the penalty would reinstate until we suspend it. I've got the authority under the charter to waive penalties and interest, and so I've done that. But
Okay.
we'll revisit it on July 1.
Yeah,
But I think, would you agree? I think largely we had this pretty much the same number of people who fail to pay on time as we normally do.
Yes, I think the timing of the date, I think our due date this time around was the 16th, I think was a Monday. And we had the majority of payments received at that point, which was good.
Yeah.
So August could be problematic.
Yes.
Possibly.
Hard to tell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus we have the added problem, Tim. I'll just mention it now. The later the school district vote goes, or the later they get approval on a budget, the more likely is we'll have to separate out the municipal tax bills from the school tax bills. We came close to doing this 2 years ago.
Right.
17.
Yeah, and so the school district, as you probably know, is meeting tonight, or the school board, and they're going to discuss the warning for the budget, as well as the budget itself. But the later it goes, it can cause a problem with the August 19th payment schedule. We'll keep you apprised of that.
My worry is that tax receipts, both locally and statewide, are going to affect a lot of things downstream over the rest of the year. And it's going to affect probably education costs, because BT Digger was forecasting the state might see a $98 million shortfall in the education fund. So that's going to drive a bunch of things, including possibly a higher property tax rate once they get their yield number right.
Yeah, it's possible.
That's all I have.
Megan, thank
Helen,
you.
Do you see
Yeah.
Megan's
Yes,
question?
I do. And she said, we read in the New York Times about the increase in domestic abuse nationwide. What are we doing to relieve homeowners and taxpayers of added financial stress? And Tim asked the question, and thanks for the response. But can you make a comment about the increase in domestic abuse nationwide? Is that translated? I guess your question, Megan, is that translating here as well?
Not yet. It's a concern of the police department, and it's a valid question, Megan. We haven't seen it in South Burlington yet, and you haven't seen it in the weekly reports.
Yeah.
Almost
no,
every
we haven't.
week we have at least one domestic violence incident that are responded to by the police department. We have not seen an uptick in that yet.
Good. Okay. Dave, do you have any questions? I think I've gone through
No,
everyone. Yes?
I don't at the present time.
Okay.
Oh, maybe my mic, man, my mic's on.
So I don't have the agenda in front of me. What is the next item?
The next item, Helen, is reports from counselors on
Okay,
your
we
committee
should-
assignment.
Okay. So has anyone had I had a phone conversation with the airport commission. Certainly revenues are really down there. So I'm not sure. And I noticed that on the DRB agenda, they're looking for changes for the hotel, but I don't know if that actually, I guess they'll want to get the stuff, the permit and the design, but I don't know where the money is for that at the moment. So that's all I have to report there. Oh, Tim?
Yes, Helen, we saw the ad for the Kirby Cottages in the Sunday real estate section of the Free Press. Do you have a comment on what's going on with that?
Well, what I do, I can tell you that they the airport in the city of Burlington wants to save those cottages. I guess they decided moving them was not going to happen. They pressed the FAA to let them stay since they are outside of the 75 line, and the FAA agreed, but said you're going to have to pay every cent back. So they are hoping to recoup much of the money through a sale, and then are looking to Burlington, to South Burlington, for the additional revenue to cover that cost. I given what's happening with the airlines and air traffic these days, they certainly aren't going to be generating excess receipts at the airport. So I don't know how that will pan out, because the sale of them is not the full price, as we're well aware. They sweetened the deal. They added, I don't know how many tens of thousands of dollars to the price, and then paid for moving costs and rehooking up their DirecTV or Comcast or whatever it is they have.
Helen, I think my remembrance, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but my remembrance was it was about $300,000 above market value paid for the house. That was my remembrance of the deal.
300,000 in total?
No, it was about $300,000 above what was paid in market value for the homes. Do you remember that, Paul?
I don't remember the exact number. I can see if we can look back in our notes, but I don't recall what it was. There was relocation expenses and some other pieces, but I don't remember the exact number. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I think that's
well. That's the number I remembered, Kevin. And when I mentioned that to Gene, he got rather excited and he said, well, it could be as much as $1.5 million, but that's based on what they can sell the houses for.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But that's where at least they're trying to keep the houses.
Yep.
Roseanne, have us a question?
Yes, I was typing it in or chatting it in, but
Oh,
I just,
okay.
but okay, whatever. The Kirby cottages, when I was in the city council, we were told were the last houses that were built in South Burlington that were truly affordable. So if what you're saying is correct, then that would take these cottages out of the affordability category because of what you're talking, what they're talking about trying to sell them for. Is that correct?
Correct.
No, I think they're trying to sell them for the market rate for a small home.
And then that's not affordable. Well, I mean, that's not affordable anymore. I mean, market rate is not affordable generally. But anyway, I just raised that because there goes those affordability.
Well, I think, yeah,
Anyway.
I think they
And
were.
they were very affordable. They're super energy efficient, but.
Oh, they
Yeah,
were.
it's either that or they get torn down, Roseanne. It's the.
Oh, I think
that's
it's great they're not being torn down. Absolutely. Yeah, they were terrific places.
Yeah.
Well, but they're still, I think they're like 250 or 280 or something. I can't remember what they're asking for them.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think it's,
Well, I think it's in the 300s,
is it 300?
over 300. I didn't see the number, but my wife told me.
Oh, okay.
I think it's also, if I may, this is Paul. From what we understand, the FAA has given some authority for them to be sold, but has also put a pretty tight timeline on that. And so it's a little bit of a juggling act. It appears for the airport that they, to our understanding, have reached out to some organizations that are interested in affordable housing, and at the same time, the FAA has given them a tight timeline. So it's, as Kevin said, the worst case scenario would be that they're torn down, and nobody wants that. So it's striving for as affordable as possible, but prioritizing their existence.
We have a question from Megan. Wasn't CHT going to play a role? And I think they're still in the conversation, Megan. But that's still a lot of money for them to come up with. And maybe the FAA is going to have to back off a little bit because airlines all over the country and airports are in disarray. Well, not disarray, but are financially having problems. Broke, yeah. They're almost insolvent. So.
I know where there are a lot of cars in Fort Myers you could get cheap right now.
Yeah, right. Funny. Yeah.
Tim, do you have any from? I'm sure we all want to hear exactly where the pension fund is. Maybe we don't.
Yeah, maybe you don't. We haven't been given an update on that. I don't know if Tom, if Pat's been in touch with you.
I know we both attended the seminar that they had, which was pretty much information that I think we would have expected that they would share. That we're still in a 60-40 mix, which I think helped protect us a little bit. But we're certainly going to be looking at taking a hit. And I think I said before, I think they'd be optimistic if we got to a 0, let alone a 7.25 expected rate of return. So anything to the 0 or the plus side would be great, and we'll see what this next month or two brings. But literally, whatever our valuation is, it's based on what the market has on June 30th, that day specifically. So we don't have a lot of time to recover.
Yeah, the webinar was really instructional about the history of dips in market values and how quickly they respond, what that rate of response is, looking back at 2008, 2009, August 2016, of course, 87. And, you know, all these dips have different mechanical underpinnings. One of the things that's different here is that, unlike 2008 and 9, structurally, the market, in terms of like the way transactions occur, from what I've read, there haven't been those issues, that things work correctly. It's just that fear drives selling, and people sold like crazy. And it will be a period of time before the market recovers something of what it had before. But I wouldn't expect it to happen in the next, I'm going to say, year. But, you know, that's a crapshoot. So we'll just have to wait and see. The only good side of this COVID thing, I mean, not that there's a good side, but that, you know, everybody understands exactly what happened in terms of people got sick, commerce was shut down, but commerce will return. And after commerce returns, there'll be some degrading fear that will ameliorate over time. And at that point, things will return somewhat to normal. It'll take a while, but it'll just take some time.
Any other reports? I don't think. We did have, I did want to just clarify or ask the council about your feelings about having some of the, well, one, do you want the DRB to continue meeting? And two, do you want to add additional committees, give them the ability to continue to meet again? And in particular, Patrick Leduc was interested in the library committee continuing to work.
Well,
So Tom, do you have any comments?
So I in my role at the University of Vermont, I have a lot of committees that I serve on and that I help coordinate. And there are 6 or 7 that I am actively attending on a monthly basis, and we are functioning. It's not the same. And I'm not saying that we should be full throttle ahead, but I personally am not opposed to supporting our committees, all of them, if they are so inclined to upskill and get comfortable with this platform to continue to conduct some business. I hear the concerns about making these things accessible, but as long as there's a dial-in option for anybody to hear, and as long as the recordings are available elsewhere, I, as one little counselor, am not opposed to finding ways to support all of our committees to continue to function as best they feel comfortable.
Okay, Megan?
I agree. Do you hear me? I put on
Yep.
You agree with Tom?
I agree with Tom. I agree with that. I hear Roseanne, but I think that when someone can call in on the phone, that the city is doing its best to get the word out. I feel that we've met the minimum requirement. I certainly understand that we're living in very unusual times and people are stressed out, as she said, that we're not able to, have business appear as usual. But I still think it's something we should try to do.
Dave?
I agree with Tom and Megan. I think at the university, again, like Tom said, they've managed to use technology to keep pretty much everything moving, not at the same pace, and with some flexibility and with a good amount of understanding on the part of folks that once in a while something's not going to go quite right. Somebody's going to get stuck, technology's not going to work as expected, and nothing can be rushed. I think it's fine and appropriate if the committees continue to meet, because otherwise we get nothing done at all. But I think with the caution that that we have to be careful not to leave anybody in a cloud of dust as we proceed with work, especially on any issues. And I think I forget, maybe Helen, you mentioned that when we were talking on the phone, that might be deemed controversial. There's an awful lot of non-controversial work that can get done. When it comes to things that are more challenging, then the committees have to work more slowly and make sure that everybody's voice is heard. That's it.
Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I agree with everybody. I think that this is the new norm for right now and the foreseeable future. And it might become the norm again later in the year, especially next winter if we have a resurgence. So I think we need to become comfortable with it, and we need to train people and teach them how to use it, because I don't think we have a choice.
Okay, thank you. I saw Barb Service.
Hi, greetings from California. I understand what all of you have said, but in this case, I need to agree with Roseanne. I'm technologically reasonably competent. I'm running Zoom meetings. I'm doing that thing out here. I've been in the academy. I think we have to think about the average person in the city of South Burlington. And they, number one, have got huge demands on their lives. And no matter how much they care about these issues, I'm not sure that they will be able to make time. And I have to tell you, there is a huge difference between listening on the telephone and doing it by GoToMeeting or whatever technology is available. I'm particularly concerned about the controversial issues. My suggestion would be that committees meet, but not make any decisions other than things that nobody's going to disagree with, at least for the rest of the month of April and into the month of May. Don't let it go forever, but set a time limit on it so they can do some work, but that we don't get to whenever this is going to get better, and have a situation where a lot of us will stand up and say, no way. So I would encourage you to sort of modify this decision and not let anything happen until at least the 1st of May in terms of big decisions. But certainly there are projects that committees are working on that they can discuss. They can move forward with analysis and planning, but that anything that involves something like a hearing really needs to be held until a time when we can feel comfortable that people have had enough time to get used to the technology or to get over the fact that they are trying to work from home, they're trying to homeschool their kids, and they're trying to stay healthy. So I have to say, I think we need to put some modification around this. That's my 2 cents.
Kevin, I have a question for you. What about staff time? I mean, it's a little harder, I think, or a little more time intense to lead a GoToMeeting meeting with a committee. Although, that's just my observation. And I know they're trying to work at home, and as Barb pointed out, I mean, some of them have children that they also have to teach. They might have a partner who needs to be separated. Or isolated. So what's your read on, thinking about this?
Well, I think you have 3 committees that are really, core committees to the city, and they're statutory committees: the council, the DRB, and the planning commission. I think you have to consider them in a different light. I think the rest of the committees are policy-making decisions or advisory committees. And I think you leave it up to the staff member and the chair to figure out whether or not they have anything that's so important that the 2 of them believe that the committee really needs to meet. I'm not thinking of much right now that's got to get done in the other committees. I know the Energy Committee would like to meet. And I think they'd be happy meeting electronically, but I don't know that any of the other committees have anything that's just so critical to get done before May or even June that they have to meet. But I just leave it to the chair and the staff member to decide that.
I will jump in. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
This is Megan Emery.
Yes.
I just will jump in here and say that I think that there might be the desire of the Natural Resources Committee to know whether or not there's a standing now and they can meet. In fact, there have been requests for members of the Natural Resources Committee to speak up about issues before the DRB or coming before the DRB. And so I think that would be something that would be good for us to be able to inform the Natural Resources Committee about.
Well, can I
I'm not-
suggest, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I'm not sure that they have a quorum yet. As a Natural Resources Committee, we were kind of in the middle of the appointments when all this kind of came apart.
Mhm.
I'd have to check in on that.
Okay. Can, I mean, Roseanne chatted
yes.
with a point of order. It's not a warned agenda item. So what if we put it on the agenda for our next meeting and reach out to all the different committees to find out who might be interested? I know Jessica Luisos thought that she did not think the planning commission should be meeting, that they would prefer, and Paul has his little hand up. So maybe we can discuss this on I think our next meeting is the 20th, and have it duly warned so committee chairs can join in, or I don't know, call up their membership and find out what people are thinking. Paul?
Just to note that to your point, Helen, the Planning Commission, Jessica did decide, and we have shared it publicly, that the commission will not be meeting until at least May 1st. And so the commission won't change that because they recognize that there's a lot that's going on and we don't want to send mixed messages on that. In the meantime, we're working on all the guidance that was given. So that group, I think, is set until at least May 1.
Okay. So is that amenable to everyone, that we have this a warned item on our next meeting and get some feedback from committees? That we certainly got it from the Planning Commission, but other committees?
Yes, that makes good sense.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Tom, okay. Tim? Yes? Okay. Barb, sir, that's everyone on the council. I would agree, since I made the motion or whatever it was. Barb, you wanted to say something else?
Yeah, just a comment about maybe letting the DRB that know that you're going to be discussing it, and asking them not to put anything on their agenda until after that discussion, anything that would be the least bit controversial.
Paul, do you want to address that, or do you want me to?
Well, I guess I would say they have a meeting tomorrow night. They all the items were warned in advance. We reached out to all the applicants and invited anybody who chose not to, that didn't want to be heard. Nobody took us up on that, and so their plan is to move forward with tomorrow night's meeting as scheduled.
I will say I did have an interesting conversation with Matt about controversial issues, and he was pretty forceful in saying that he does not feel he should identify controversial issues, but that he always lets people have the time to speak on anything that's controversial. And Darla commented that, I mean, if something becomes controversial, they often continue the meeting so that those who are concerned have an opportunity. But I don't know, maybe Paul can give more guidance on how you determine something is controversial.
Hey, Helen, before Paul goes there, I need to hop off this call.
Okay.
Paul and Tom, can you finish up for me?
Yeah, this is our last item, so.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you.
See you soon.
So Paul, do you want to just comment?
I guess
And
I
then
would just
Megan
say,
has
Matt has made a point during his time of chair of really emphasizing public input and all the manners in which it needs to take place. He reiterated that last week, and I think as staff, we can attest that that has been something that he's worked really hard at, whether that's making sure that people in a meeting know where items are in an agenda, or erring on the side of making sure that everybody's been heard. And so that's a commitment that he's made from the very beginning, that he reiterated last week. Helen, you're muted at the moment.
Yes. Megan?
I was curious if we were going to discuss the May 7th election at all. I was actually hoping that Kevin would have brought it up, but is it too late to have a little discussion?
I think,
Well,
Megan, this is Tom. I think the school board's meeting tonight to finalize that. It might be at 7 o'clock was their meeting, I'm not sure. And I know that Donna was going to tune in as well. And we're going to group up with her in the morning to kind of determine what next steps the city would need to take in response to whatever the school board actually decides at their meeting tonight.
Okay.
I know one of the concerns from Donna was having BCA members willing to work, and what alternatives there might be for either alternative people or an alternative way to have voting done. So I know she's been exploring that with the Secretary of State's office.
Okay.
I read somewhere where BCA members said they were uncomfortable with an election soon, and nobody asked my opinion. Was there a questionnaire that went out that I didn't see?
I didn't get one.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so I don't
Well, I
know
don't know.
about that. Maybe people individually called Donna and said,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
just don't. Tom, Hubbard, do you know?
Yeah, I think that's correct, Helen. I think she was starting to hear from a number of people that they were uncomfortable with the social distancing being called in to work at the election.
Tom Chittenden, did you have a comment? You're muted.
No, I do not. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, I do know that David has requested to come to our next council meeting to present their budget. But that's a different issue than when we vote on it, Megan, and I think we'll see what they decide tonight. I personally hope that they listen carefully to Donna. I think it would be a challenge for people to vote, and so. Oh, Roseanne, you'd like to offer something regarding the DRB topics?
Yes, but I was wanting to make, this is Roseanne Greco. I was wanting to make this comment regarding Matt Coda's, I guess, response to not making a determination on what is controversial, and responding to allowing people to have their say. It's not related to whether something is controversial. Common sense is pretty much all you need. And I've been to enough DRB meetings to know that if somebody wants to put a front porch on or something, that's usually not a controversial issue. If somebody wants to build 100 houses, in someone else's neighborhood, that's controversial, or will most likely be controversial. So I think allowing people to have a say is totally separate from making a determination of what proposals might likely be controversial. I think if you've been doing this for any period of time, common sense will let you know which ones will likely be controversial. The big ones, the large ones, the ones that have an impact on people's neighborhood or on the natural resources. So I think you could make a determination very simply that there are certain developments, some of which are going to be discussed tomorrow, that are likely to cause residents of South Burlington to be concerned.
Thank you. Well, let's have that fuller discussion at our meeting on the 20th. Is there any other business? Anyone on the phone who wants to say anything? Sue, did we speak slowly enough for you and clearly enough?
You were wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Can I ask,
Okay.
it's Dave, Could I ask something else?
Yes.
Would it be possible maybe to have just a quick update from each committee as to what their priority topics are and where they are so that we can get a clear picture? Does that make any sense? Maybe it doesn't, but I kind of think.
I like that, Dave, asking each chair to maybe write something up for the council to consider at the next meeting. If not,
Yeah,
nothing,
brief, nothing
know,
complicated.
Mhm.
And maybe,
But
include what's next from their perspective. And that informs us and informs the public as to what each committee has done, is doing, and is looking to do. And maybe that will help keep everybody connected a little bit. Just a thought.
I think we can ask them to do that if they're in a position to write that up. It certainly might help us determine, yes, this committee has a lot going on and needs to
Yeah.
have some good conversations. So maybe it's okay if they do meet. Personally, I like Barb's comment that maybe they can meet and discuss but not propose anything necessarily until we can have a fuller and easier way of communicating.
Yeah.
Even though this is the new norm.
No, Barb's point is Dave. Barb's point is well taken. But I think this little synopsis summary from each committee might be very helpful to a lot of people. And I would hope that the committee chairs, I don't think it'll take them but 10 minutes each to do it. Maybe a little longer for PC and DRB, but it shouldn't be too much longer.
Okay, Tom, Hubbard, can you share that with Kevin?
I will. And just to clarify, Dave, did you want that ahead of time before the meeting?
It would be good if we could, get it, but if we can't, then we'll review it at the meeting. Whatever works.
Okay, thank you.
I'm learning to be extremely flexible. With 4 classes, flexibility is the word of the day. Not to mention every week is a complete adventure.
Right. Okay, and Roseanne, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment, but said good suggestion, but it would also be good to have as many committee members virtually present at a city council meeting. If nothing else, it will show their use of technology. So that might be, God, hard for me to handle, but that would be a good test. Okay, if there's nothing to come before the council, I want to just congratulate the management for keeping us informed and all your difficult work at this time. A motion to adjourn.
This is Tom Chittenden. I move to adjourn.
Do the second?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All in favor? I guess I have to call.
Aye.
Well, it sounds like aye. Did everyone vote?
Aye.
Okay.
I don't think anybody didn't want to adjourn, so I think we're good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for putting up with my stumbling through this, but I'll get
great.
better.
Worked out
I
just
promise.
fine.
Yeah, you did
Worked
well,
well.
Helen.
Thanks, Helen.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
No.
Stay
Good
healthy.
night, everyone.
See you
Good
soon.
night.
Paul. I'll see you Wednesday. Thanks.
Sounds good. Ugh.